Space Arena.
Ground Arena. Saga Podcast.
And welcome back to the Space Arena, Ground Arena Saga Podcast, where we cover Star Wars Unlimited from the ground and up into space. I am Mr. Ben, and today I'm joined by Banana Crapshoot. Banana, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. You did much better on that intro than I did when it was my turn to pilot the show, so well done.
I got real nervous during the theme song. Like,
I get it.
Am I going to fumble this one too? Yeah. And then he's going to make fun of me.
I get goosebumps. I get goosebumps and nerves every time. It's like, well, like you're doing like you're fighting now for like jujitsu and stuff. So you know like even you get those knots in your stomach, right? At least I did whenever I competed. Even as an adult, you get those knots in your stomach. I get that when the Saga theme is playing before we start. So, anyways. Happy to be here, excited to talk some Star Wars Unlimited.
Yeah, I think the like that knot in your stomach feeling, that pressure, that's part of the thrill of playing card games in a tournament setting for me. I like the idea of playing for stakes, and certainly when we get on the mic, we mean it. We're here for stakes.
Oh yeah, Omaha stakes.
Yeah. So what have you been playing this week, man?
Well, I think last time I said I haven't been playing much like tabletop games in meat space. I'm still playing Elder Scrolls Online, running through that Necrom update, and the Phantom Liberty expansion for Cyberpunk 2077 came out also recently, so I started a new playthrough with that. So I've been video gaming, not really card gaming at the moment, but there is a Versus System 2 PCG regional not too far from me here next month, so I am starting to look at decks and starting to get some cards together out of the binder to, I have like 70 cards right now, and I'm sure I'll have like 20 more before I need to start whittling that down, but I'm getting cards together to build a deck we'll see if I can get there. I still haven't narrowed that down, but I might be playing in the regional in Wilmington for Versus System 2 PCG.
That's a fun new format. There's like more than 100 legal main characters, so it's, well, theoretically wide open. I think there's a few that are like clearly more powerful than others. Like most card games, there's a meta.
Right. And I haven't bought any of the new releases like the last couple months, so I just haven't pulled the trigger on them. So like, I think the Symbiotes arc, the last one that I finished, the like arcs, so like I haven't got any of the Fantastic Four, like the X-Force or the those newer mutant sets. So I think I'll probably be playing, if I play like some sort of a Symbiotes deck.
Well, I definitely think there's decks for both Carnage and Venom, and a lot of what you want for those decks are just within that Symbiote arc. So you're probably pretty well positioned. Because it is a relatively, while there's a lot of main characters, the overall card pool is limited to just 2 years worth of sets.
Yeah, so we'll see. Kicking it around, I'll see if I can get out there. My kid's birthday's the day before, so we'll see. What about you? What have you been playing?
Family over cards, always.
Always, yeah.
So since the last time we recorded, DC Dual Force has instituted a ranked mode finally in the beta. So I messed around with it a little bit, and then rather than handling the climb to World's Finest, so World's Finest in Dual Force is like Legend in Hearthstone or Masters in Eternal. It's the thing you get to at the top of the ranked ladder. And the way you should do that, if you want to climb for that, is you start playing games at the beginning of the season and you play consistently the whole time. And generally speaking, it's not that hard. But I decided with 9 days left in the season, I'm like, I'm going to get World's Finest. I didn't make it.
No.
I got to rank 3, and I had a choice to make. I was like, well, I could keep playing this and I'm sure I could get there, or I can go to jiu-jitsu practice. So that's what I did. So I feel pretty good with a rank 3 finish, but I wish I would have done it the right way and spent all 30 days instead of just the last 9 trying to make my way up that ladder. So that consumed a lot of my game playing over the last like week or so in that last minute push, which sadly ended in failure.
So you'll get it next season.
That's the plan. I'm already well on my way.
Good.
I'm higher than I was on day 9 last season already, so I think I'm going to be fine.
Have you been seeing lots of like Sylvana energy, like lightning bolt shenanigans?
Yeah, and I'm playing Batman Poison Ivy, which is a relatively slow control-y deck. So I can beat those decks, but it's not like the best matchup, and the ladder is just rotten with them right now.
Yeah, when they pop hard. So
yeah. A lot of extra card draw, which is something I'm a big fan of in all games, including the one that brought us here today, Star Wars Unlimited. You like that segue?
That was a good segue. Yeah, it's a good one.
I suppose the first piece of news we need to hit is we finally have a concrete release date. And it turns out, I think it was the first place we heard this was that artist spoiler, I think, right?
So, yeah, so a couple of months ago, there was an artist that posted on Twitter like, hey, I'm excited to let you know that, I'm doing art for Star Wars Unlimited, which comes out in March. And then shortly after, the tweet was deleted and retweeted without the date. And then Spiel, when the Spiel event that just happened, I think it was in Germany or Brussels, or I'm not exactly sure. They, under their on their app for their event info for Star Wars Unlimited, it said for the game was releasing in March. So there was a couple things leading us to that date, but official word from FFG now of March 8th, 2020. So what are your thoughts on a March 8th release date, end of Q1 2024?
Obviously, I'd like to see sooner. I would have loved to see Star Wars Unlimited actually be able to fight Lorcana for some of those Christmas dollars this year. But we've seen way too many times where companies in a variety of different types of products have rushed things to market that weren't fully cooked, that weren't really ready, and it's been disastrous. Like I guess I just mentioned Lorcana. So I'm hoping that with this much runway, seeing what we all just have witnessed over the last few months with the last like big hot TCG of the year, that when this drops at the end of Q1, we're going to be met with stock displays. We're going to be able to find starter decks. We're actually going to be able to play this game with other people, and it's not going to be fist fights to buy $20 packs. And I'm hoping that that's the kind of rollout that all of this waiting is leading up to. To be fair to FFG, it's not like their release schedule is contingent on Lorcana. I just think having these like mega huge TCGs launch at the same time, there's probably some people who are going to get tired of waiting for Star Wars Unlimited. Well, I like other Disney stuff too, and not everybody's going to be willing to play 2 TCGs. So the more people Lorcana sucks up, the bigger Star Wars Unlimited needs to be to still get a piece of that TCG pie. So there's good and bad here. I think the good is that I hope they are building to this in a responsible way, that we're not going to see people trampled. We're not going to hear things like that. The bad is Lorcana is getting a really big head start. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I obviously would have liked to seen it sooner. I mean, we first found out about the game like middle to the end of May, right? So almost, it's gonna be like 10 months of lead up to release, which seems like a long time, but I don't know, maybe that's good because FFG, I think they're learning from the sins of their past finally, and they're moving on and they're growing. So the steady drip of content and releases and previews, I think, is enough to keep the community engaged and we want more, but they're giving us enough that we can print proxies and play on Felt Table, and the people that are playing on TTS are playing on TTS and doing these things that we can have fun with the game, even though it's not even out yet. I don't know. I personally don't ever really think about Lorcana other than when I troll Lorcana Twitter accounts.
You're probably doing it right, not thinking about Lorcana.
Yeah, I think it's a different market. I think some people there's going to be crossover, but I think I don't know. I think the Lorcana target audience and the Star Wars Unlimited target audience aren't necessarily the same target audience, and I could be way off on that. But I mean, I don't give two rats about Disney princesses, but kids do, and if that's something that can get you and your kids playing a game together, then that's awesome. But I don't know. I don't necessarily think that Star Wars Unlimited needs to worry about Lorcana. I think if they can carve their own space in the community regardless. And I also think Lorcana's been kind of a mess since before release, right? And before its launch. So I think there's a bunch of people that are in wait and see mode with Lorcana too. So we'll see how that shakes out. But so we'll have a March 8th release and the week before that pre-release. And you can pre-order. Your local stores can start placing pre-orders for the pre-release kits, booster boxes, and starter decks this Monday, October 16th, this upcoming Monday. So make sure you're talking to your local stores. If you haven't reached out to your local stores yet, reach out. Let them know, hey, there's this cool Star Wars game coming out. Some people might not even know it's coming out. Some people are wait and see. They want to see what kind of interest there is. We'll get that going now at your local store. Start building that hype now. So you can have a successful launch and pre-release. But yeah.
So my store does this thing once a month where a lot of us mega nerds come and hang out after the store closes, and the beers that are in the mini fridge come out, and it's like adults hanging out in the store, kind of like the VIPs or whatever. And the last couple times that we've done this, I have brought with me the demo decks from Gen Con. I haven't said, hey, I'm going to teach people how to play. We haven't done any kind of event at the store, but I've just had this stuff with me when I'm there hanging out. And the way people react when they're like, wait, I can play Star Wars Unlimited? I'm like, yeah, it's just, they're proxies, but this is what they had at Gen Con. Oh, let me see. And the way people's eyes light up when the action economy starts to click and when they start to get that ping damage with Darth Vader, it has been delightful. This is one of those games that just sells itself. But in order for people to see the light, in order for that door to be opened, your store's got to have the product. So now is the time to start talking to those stores about making sure that product's there.
Right. And I think one reason the release date's probably as far out as it is because they're really trying to nail this global release, right? All at the same time. So I think they gave themselves room for that. They also said that there was an article or at Spiel when they were going through and talking to people, they said that they have concepts through set 9 and they're internally testing up to set 7 at the moment. And we don't, so I mean, that's year 3, that's year 3 stuff. So they're a couple years ahead. So that seems pretty good. That gives me hope.
I should say that if I set aside my selfish desire to play the game and my concern that Lorcana is going to steal some of the market share, the overall plan of almost a year, 10 months of rollout and the steady but slow trickle of cards, I think this has all been very well planned marketing on FFG's part. We're getting just enough that the hype just keeps building and building. Obviously, my personal feelings shouldn't actually be factored into it, but I'm not as blasé as you are about the Venn diagram of Lorcana fans versus potential SWU fans. And you're right, the Lorcana's been a mess, and if they don't recover, then I guess we don't have to worry about any of this. But if they do get their footing, that's a big competitor, and there's already a bunch of other big TCG competitors. That said, can the Star Wars fandom carry a game kind of all on its own? I mean, if any fandom could, it's probably Star Wars.
Yeah, it's Star Wars. There's a couple I think licenses that could, that just that fan base could carry games. Star Wars is definitely one of them. I would agree with.
All right, well,
One more
big piece of
thing.
news out of the way. Do we want to dive into some cards?
Sure, can I just one more thing?
Oh, sure.
Star Wars Unlimited FFG confirmed they're going to be at PAX Unplugged in Philly the beginning of December. So I will be there Friday at least. I already have that planned out. I've also worked that day, so I'll be there Friday. So I'll get to do a demo, and I'm trying to work out some more like interviews and stuff with the team. So the design team. So that'll be cool. And I know like the guys from Golden Dice, they're from South Jersey, so they'll be there. So there's going to be like a community meetup Friday for Star Wars Unlimited, and
Oh,
the game's not
nice.
even out yet. So that'll be cool. So if you're going to be at Star Wars, if you're going to be at PAX Unplugged, definitely on the community Discord under events, look for the PAX Unplugged thread, and we'll get something going. So yeah, back to you.
Getting my slideshow going here. And let's talk about some cards. I cannot believe the Wampa is actually a playable unit in this game. I am so delighted that I don't even care about any of the text on the card. Just the fact that there's a Wampa that I can put in my deck, I think is great. But I guess for the people who do care about what our widgets do, he's a 4-cost aggression unit. He's a 4/5 with Overwhelm. So not a lot of fancy moving parts to this guy, but he's a Wampa. I don't think there should have to be, right? I don't know. What are your thoughts on this one?
I know he's a pretty solid. So the Wampa's name is Steve, I found out. So as soon as I saw this card, I pinged the guys at Wampa Radio, another great Star Wars Unlimited podcast, and they affectionately named this Wampa Steve. So Steve, the Wampa, I think he's pretty solid for a single aspect 4-cost. I think he's going to be the bomb in sealed and limited formats. I think a really cheeky play with the Wampa, if you're playing like an aggression vigilance deck, is Wampa plus entrenched, so he can't attack bases, but he gets +3/+3, so he's a 7/8 with Overwhelm. Seems pretty fun. So yeah, but I think the stats are fair for the cost with the ability. It's not a world beater, it's just a common, but I think it's a solid, again, another solid common card that'll be great in limited formats. So they really, I think, are nailing the card design for like, hey, these cards should all be playable in limited format, So I think they're doing a good job with that. What are your thoughts on Steve, the Wampa creature?
Yeah, the card is fine. It's going to be a good curve filler / beater in sealed limited environments. Probably fair enough that it could see play in constructed, although it's just vanilla enough. Once there's multiple sets worth of aggression cards out there, maybe this one doesn't make the cut. But where this is just amazing is flavor. I love that we got the Wampa. I love the art on it. And in a comment, this card's absolutely going to see play. Nothing too fancy here, but it gets the job done, and it does it with style.
Yep. Steve's baller.
Moving on to a disabling Fang Fighter. This is a 3-cost, 3/2 space unit, still in the aggression faction, and it has a win played ability. When this card is played, you may defeat an upgrade. Banana, what do you think?
I think this card is situational, very good. I think it'll see playing constructed. If you've played against the Luke deck at all, you realize how much of a pain the shield tokens can be. Shield tokens and experience tokens are upgrades. So you can play Disabling Fang Fighter, remove a shield to clear the way for removing a unit. You can use it to get rid of lightsabers. So I think this is a good tech card. I think it'll definitely see play. and constructed. I think it's pretty solid overall. Like the 3 for 3/2 is kind of whatever. It's not the greatest, but with the ability, that makes it, situationally really good.
Yeah, you're getting a completely reasonable space body. Now, if it was a 3-cost 3/2 on the ground, that feels a little weaker, but it's not. It's a space body, and it has the added benefit of letting you destroy something. So if you're in a situation where you know your opponent doesn't have any upgrades, uh, or has few enough of them that you're not worried about him, you can still run this guy out just as a dude on the board and not feel bad about it. This is kind of everything you want to see in a tech card. Like it does its tech thing, but minus that specific trick, it's still a totally fair card. Oh, wait a minute. Something's wrong with my slideshow here. Sorry about that, man. Okay, here we go. Takedown. 4-cost event. Defeat a unit with 5 or less remaining hit points. What are your thoughts?
Vigilance gets another one. 4 cost. You're paying a premium to defeat situationally a unit, but this doesn't have the lever of it needing to be a non-leader unit, so you can finish off a leader with this. You play a Sabine leader, you flip the leader for playing against Vigilance, because I can definitely see Takedown being a solid removal card in blue, because you can just straight up defeat any unit with 5 or less health. So it seems pretty solid to me.
So one of the things that Vigilance as a faction appears to not be getting really much or any of is direct damage type stuff. So all of the removal is just defeat this unit or kind of deleting stuff without letting you just put damage on it. The way this is worded and costed, I think most of the time, if you're trying to play this, you're wanting to use it to kill a unit to get like value out of it. You're going to have to put some damage on something to bring its hit points down enough to clear it off with takedown. So probably you're going to be committing a 2-for-1 a lot of the time, because I don't think you want to pay 4-cost to just delete a 3-cost unit or something that's likely to have 5 or less hit points printed. I think it's something that you're going to want to use this to take a big guy off the board at some point, which means probably in constructed, I'm leaning towards Vigilance as a faction looking for its removal in whatever, like if you're playing with a Vigilance leader, whatever your base color is, that's probably where you're going to get your removal, because I like damage based removal more than this strict defeating unit stuff. Now, I will add, this doesn't care if you have shields, which is a pretty big deal. So in those specific situations where you're facing somebody that has shields, this might actually be better than damage-based removal. But I think damage-based removal is going to end up being more useful, generally speaking. We don't know all the cards yet, so that may be a hot take. I may regret that one, but that's kind of where I'm landing. So I'm a little bit lukewarm on this card. I think within this faction, it makes a lot of sense, but it's not my favorite removal card that we've seen. Unless you have further thoughts on Takedown, I guess we'll move on to Tactical Advantage. This is a 1-cost command event. Give a unit +2/+2 for this phase. What do you think of this common card?
It's a limited format filler. I don't know if this will see play in constructed. I think it has niche uses, since it's singled down for the phase. I mean, that was an overwhelming barrage, which costs like 5, and gives something +2/+2, and then it deals damage to everything. So if you would play this with it, but then that's 6 resources of stuff you're committing. So I don't know. I mean, it definitely, for one, it's a decent buff for the phase if you can make it. If you can trade up, I guess you got to look at your value trading then. But I don't know. I'm not super high on it. What are your thoughts?
So, if memory serves, I think it's an aggression card that's pay 1, give a unit +2 attack, and then attack with it. I think. And
No,
that's
it's cunning.
it's cunning. Okay.
Well, there's shoot first, which is a 1 cost that gives something +1, and it just straight up like you deal the damage before your attacker. And then it has surprise strike, which is a 2 cost that it gets +3.
Okay, so it costs 2. All right. I like both of those cards better than this, primarily because this thing isn't letting you attack. This thing is, if I play this, this is me sending up a flare into the sky, telling you, my opponent, I want to do something with this unit. I much prefer the kind of versions of these small combat buffs where you buff a unit and they immediately get to attack. You immediately get to do something with it. This feels sluggish and slow and telegraphed to me. Probably it makes the cut in draft. Probably it doesn't make the cut in constructed. That's my prediction.
I think you're probably spot on with that.
All right. 3 cost upgrade for the aggression and villainy faction, the Fallen Lightsaber. This is just Darth Maul's lightsaber, right? Attached to a non-vehicle unit. If the attached unit is a force unit, it gains on attack, deal 1 damage to each ground unit the defending player controls, and it gives the attached unit +3/+3. It's probably fair to say you most of the time don't want to play this unless you can get it on a force unit and get that on attack buff going on. +3/+3 for 3 cost feels fair, but what speaks to me about this card is the ability to do ping damage to everything on the ground that the opposing player has. What are your thoughts?
I love everything about this card. I love the cost. I love the aspects. I love the artwork. I love every word in the text box and the colors. It's just an amazing card for 3. That on attack ability is ridiculous. To ping everything, like you're clearing shields on everything. This is a card. This, I think, if you don't deal with whatever this goes on, you're probably in for a bad time. Man, I don't know. I think this card's great all around. I have very strong feelings, not normal feelings about this card.
Are they aggressive feelings?
They're aggressive and quite villainous.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I could say that's even close to a criticism is the amount of value you get out of this card. Your opponent has a little bit of control over that in that they can choose how many ground units they deploy to the field if they know this is a threat that you've got coming. So your opponent has a little bit of counterplay, but if instead of playing a 3/2 body to the field, you choose not to play it because you don't want me to ping its shield, okay, cool, I'll take that. So even the counterplay that your opponent has, I don't think is that strong.
Yeah, I think this card's just really good.
Yeah. I mean, the closest thing I could do to come up with a criticism, and I end up complimenting it. So yeah, it seems like a good card. Okay, Mace Windu, Party Crasher. He is a 7 cost, aggression, heroism affiliated 5/7, and he has ambush. So ambush is the keyword that when it comes into play, you can ready the unit, and if there's a unit they can attack, there has to be something for them to attack. And this specific unit has, when this unit attacks and defeats a unit, ready him. So essentially, Mace Windu is going to be able to ready once with the conditional readying of ambush, and then if there's somebody that he can kill, ready twice in the same turn. What are your thoughts on this guy?
I think this is a great boss monster, right? Like the attack value is very fair for the other expensive units we've seen, right? Like Palpatine's 8 and he's a 6/6 with overwhelm, right? So Mace costs 1 less, he's 1 less attack but 1 more health, and he has ambush. So he comes down, boom, I'm going to blow your thing up, I'm going to ready him, and now I'm about to swing at your base for 5. And if you have I don't know, any type of whatever upgrades heroism's going to get, right? After you can get value out of that upgrade the turn you play him, he brings a lot of value, I think, in board control. and in that aggression aspect, swinging twice in a turn, I think Mace Windu's pretty good. Not my favorite artwork, but yeah, the abilities, I think it's a strong card overall. And he's a legendary, so.
So if this guy's on the board in front of me and I get to play with him, I'm excited. I love readying units and being able to attack multiple times in a turn. I think that's great. How likely is his 5 attack going to be big enough that he's going to be able to kill a thing and not get killed by that thing back on turn 7? Like, there's some big boys on that turn. So that you might not always get the double ready with him every time. That's probably still okay. I think the biggest problem with this guy is the 7 cost. He looks like a curve topper for an aggression deck, but if we're talking about, and when I say aggression there, I don't mean the faction. I mean like an aggro deck, like a swarmy deck that's trying to turn right and do damage. I can tell, talking about this game, I'm going to use aggression to mean not the faction, and it's going to be awkward going forward from time to time. But those types of decks, the decks that want to push hard and just go face every turn, the thing that happens to them a lot of times is they run out of gas. Now, a cool mitigating factor in Star Wars Unlimited to the gas tank of the aggro deck is you don't have to play a resource every turn. You can choose to, or you can take 2 cards into your hand and then have 2 options to play instead of only 1 after you row a resource.
Yep.
But if you're not rowing resources, how are you going to get to 7 and play Mace Windu?
Yeah.
So this, to me, it feels like a curve topper for a deck that wants to curve out at like 5, which means it feels like he might end up not having a good home in Constructed. But I could be wrong. Maybe aggression aggro decks will not have the gas tank problem as severely as I'm thinking that they will, and getting up to turn 7 won't be as big a deal as I think it is going to be for these types of decks. In that case, then he's awesome. But I'm a little, I think he's a 7 cost guy for a deck that doesn't want to play dudes that cost more than like 4 or 5.
That could totally be fair. I think some of that will have to do with, so since aggression is just one of the aspects, right? Unless you're going solely aggression. If you're playing like command or vigilance, you might be playing like a slow deck and sprinkling in some aggro units to push damage, right? So he could be that late game way that you're pushing damage to help get to your slower control win condition.
That's actually really fair. I was thinking about him in a aggression faction first with something else sprinkled in, and I was like, even if you get some ramp, I don't know if I want. But what you proposed of sprinkling some aggression into a command deck, okay, actually, yeah. Or vigilance, you put a shield on this guy, so you guarantee that his second ready thing goes off. Okay, yeah, I can see some more uses for him than I did initially. Any more thoughts on Mace?
No, that's it. This party's over.
All right, Grand Inquisitor. So this is a aggression, villainy, faction leader. He is a 6. I guess I'll start with his undeployed side. He has action, exhaust him to deal 2 damage to a friendly unit with 3 or less power, and then ready it. And he can deploy on turn 6. When he deploys, he becomes a 3/6. And when he attacks, he can deal 1 damage to another friendly unit with 3 or less power and ready that. How do you feel about the Grand Inquisitor?
I think it's interesting. I don't know how many units we currently have that we can get mileage out of his ability. Because, like, needing to do 2 damage to it, like, I don't know, you need at least a 3 health unit. So you're not playing anything in this deck that has less than 3 health. And then it also has to have 3 or less power, right? So, I mean, I think this is the first true, I guess that's not true. Sabine was pretty aggro. Grand Inquisitor is one of the first like true aggro leaders we've seen though, where he fits the traditional swarm with things and turn right? Like Vader's an aggression villainy, but he seems more of like a a mid-range type leader, where this feels like straight up aggro because you want to put the units on the board and then you can ready them the turn they're played, and you can try to get more mileage out of them. I think that 3 or less power though is going to be what keeps him from really being super strong. I think that is what's going to hold it back, is his ability that he can only ready units with 3 or less power. What are your thoughts?
I'm not super impressed. I feel like Darth Vader has the ability to deal damage to units on his side, but he's got the flexibility to also reach out and touch enemy characters. Yeah, theoretically, I play a unit that's like a 3/4, and I get to attack with it, and then I get to attack with it again because of this guy. But it just feels so Rainbow Unicorn. Uh, I, I, yeah, I'm just super not impressed with this guy. Maybe once we see the full scope of the available units, because I will say there are a lot of units in this game that are bigger health pool than attack. So the 3 power or less is like, if this was versus or magic, I think he would have a lot less targets. There are going to be some targets for this guy, but do I value the ability to swing with something twice this turn more than having that as a unit next turn, like paying that much life? I don't know. I'm struggling to see why I would play this guy over any of the other aggression leaders we've seen.
Yeah, I think you're right on. I mean, most so aggression's kind of interesting. If I'm looking through the cards on SWODB, right, so the Fang Fighter only has 2 health, right? Like, the Wampa has too much power.
His ability almost has to target units that aren't in the aggression faction, because aggression is the only faction that has units that have bigger attacks and smaller defenses. And it's not even all the aggression units, but they have some. A lot of the other factions are all big butts and tiny attacks.
Yeah.
So maybe if you pair him with some, I guess if there's some kind of like vigilance, like shield heavy thing that you could do, and then his damage isn't actually hurting the units, just pinging the shield off. I'm really bending over backwards to try to be charitable to this card. I'm not impressed with this guy. All right, let's move on. This card I like. All right, IG-88. This is a aggression, villainy affiliated leader. His undeployed action is attack with a unit. If you control more units than the defending player, the attacker gets +1/+0 for this attack. That trigger may sometimes be hard to satisfy. His deployed side is, which can happen on turn 5 once you have 5 resources. He is a 5/4, and each other friendly unit gains raid 1. And a reminder, raid is a keyword that gives a unit +1 attack while attacking. What are your thoughts on this guy?
I think he's better than the Grand Inquisitor. His undeployed side, I think, is if you don't have the initiative, I don't think you're going to get much mileage out of it. Early game, his deployed side I really like, just a static raid 1 to everything. But yeah, I think he's a good solid aggro leader. I think he's better than the Grand Inquisitor for sure.
The undeployed side is gonna reward you for setting up what his deployed side pays off. Now, I don't know if you're actually gonna use the undeployed side that much, particularly early game. It's hard to see your opponent allowing you to get that bonus attack consistently. But if your game plan is to get a bunch of units out and play low cost things and have a few turns at the early game where you're kind of building, and then on turn 5 all of a sudden all your guys are +1 attack and you're crashing in and trading up and wiping things out. Oh, I lost my leader, but now I have the ability at the tail end of the game where your forces are all depleted and tattered because I came in with this big swing turn where everybody was +1 attack. Now I can get some activations out of that undeployed side. That's kind of the play pattern I envision for this guy. I love the art. I love the deck building that this is going to incentivize. This is a deck that's really going to reward you for going wide on the board and trying to have like a turn where you can guarantee you're going to get some value out of giving everybody raid. There's a lot of things here that I like a lot.
Yeah, I think this
is it going to be like competitive?
Oh.
That I'm not sure, because if you can't stick those units, this guy is blank.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a fail rate with this guy without a doubt. How high is that fail rate going to be? That remains to be seen once we get more cards.
I think this is probably the second leader, swarmy leader we've seen, right? So Leia was command heroism. She's kind of a swarmy. She cheats in attacks. And then he wants to be swarmy and buff his attack. So interesting how they've gone about the different ways to utilize like a swarm, go wide. I'm guessing low the ground aggro deck.
He's almost like a combo. Because you build your board and that's the setup, and then when he comes out you get to attack with, admittedly it's only +1 attack on all these units, but the more there the better that buff is. And that's kind of how I'm looking at him. I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to have fun trying.
Yeah, he's definitely one that I have earmarked to throw around with at locals or when we get the Saga League Season 1 going,
All right, moving on. We have best art in the set, Han Solo.
This, all art is subjective. There's some people that really like how stylized this is. I feel like...
Hey man, if you like this art, I don't want to yuck your yum. I'm not a fan of this artwork. There's too many like weird things going on for me, but I am a fan of this card. So Han Solo is a cunning, heroism affiliated leader. His undeployed side has an action of put a card from your hand into play as a resource and ready it. At the start of the next action phase, defeat a resource you control. Once you have 6 resources, you can deploy him, and he then becomes a 4/6 ground unit with on attack. Put the top card of your deck into play as a resource and ready it. At the start of the next action phase, defeat a resource you control. How do you feel about Han, other than the artwork?
I don't know yet. I think it looks like there's really high upside. I mean, he allows you to play a turn ahead, right? So you can deploy him around early because of his action, right? But then you're losing cards from hand to do that. So I think you're trading tempo for card advantage. I think you're going to want to build him with some sort of whatever card draw you can get in this game extra. I think he's going to be a combo leader, but I think we need to see some more pieces. I think it's interesting how he's trading like combo for card advantage, right? He's gambling with the cards in his hand, right? So it's very fitting for the character. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think he has a high ceiling, but I don't know. I think he's got a very, very low floor. But it's interesting that he can cheat bigger units out early, so maybe I'm just way overthinking it. Because he lets you play a turn ahead, basically. But you're sacrificing on his undeployed side that card advantage, and then you're milling yourself when he is deployed. So interesting, high risk, high reward play style, which is fitting for the character. But I don't know how consistent that'll be, like in a constructed format. But he looks like a lot of fun to play and deck build with. But yeah, so hesitantly optimistic, I guess, is how I would feel about it. What about you?
I'm thrilled for this guy. This is the kind of card that I love getting my hands on, because if you just fire off his abilities willy-nilly, you are going to punish yourself. You're going to run out of cards. You're going to be suffocated on options. Then you'll deploy him, and that one-of copy of Palpatine or whatever it is that you're trying to find, that's the card that's going to hit your resource row. Like, this card is going to punish you so often, but when you get it right, you're literally always going to be one step ahead of the other person. What better character to always be one step ahead. I guess Aladdin, he wrote a whole song about it. But in the Star Wars universe, what better character to be one step ahead? I love it. Everything about this, except for his plunging neckline and his weird cocked eyebrow and some of the things going on in the artwork. Everything else, all the words on this card, I'm thrilled for this one. This is right up my alley. I love these kinds of cards.
So my biggest problem with the artwork is how he apparently got a spray-on tan from the neck down. So his face is like a normal color, and then everything else is extremely tan.
It's just because the dashboard is so bright. There's lights shining right in his face.
Well, with that much skin showing, they should be blinking everywhere. I mean, I don't know. That's what throws me off the most is the contrast between the face and the rest of his body. That's kind of like if you ever see, like, I don't know, if you ever go on TikTok and the girls are wearing way too much makeup or their face is one color and so it's a big thing. So that is what throws me off is the contrast between the color of his face and everything else. I think if they were the same color, I don't think it would be as bad, but that is what throws my eyes off.
There's like a consistent thing that happens in Netflix shows where the people have like way too much like yellow makeup on their face, and then there's like this line right on their neck where it just starkly changes color.
Right. That's what's happening here.
Yeah, and that's kind of happening here.
Netflix
among
on.
A lot of other strange things. And let me be clear, I like big swings.
Yeah.
I like it when artists take chances. I like it when game designers take chances. I like big swings. So I appreciate that somebody put a distinct, unique, personal spin on a beloved character. And if you like this, again, I don't want to yuck your yum, but for me, this artwork just doesn't work.
What's next?
All right. We go from Han Solo to his trusty steed, the Millennium Falcon. This is a 3-cost space unit. It is a 3/4. It enters play ready. That's not ambush. This is just straight up enters play ready. When you ready cards during the regroup phase, either pay 1 resource or return this unit to her owner's hand.
So, this is really good for 3 cost. It's a legendary. So, interesting little tidbit on rules FAQ just for timing purposes. Obviously, you're going to want to play this with Han Solo. So you can pay the 1 resource and then defeat the resource from Han's ability that you just used to pay for this, so you don't have any exhausted resources during your action phase. So because this happens during the regroup phase, and then I believe Han's ability, the timing on that, at the start of the next action phase, right? So it goes action phase, regroup phase.
Mm-hmm.
So, beginning of the regroup phase, you pay the 1, and then the beginning of the action phase, you defeat it, right? So you ready all your when you're readying all your cards, you ready your resources, pay 1 to defeat this. Well, first you're gonna play another resource from your hand. You're gonna draw 2, place 1, ready everything. Then you can pay 1 for this, and then you can defeat it when the action phase starts with Han's ability, that resource you exhausted. So you actually don't lose anything you wouldn't have already lost with Han. Han allows you to keep the Falcon out, kind of cheating it in, which is interesting. Just weird little. If you followed me, right? The way that works, you pay the 1 for the Falcon, and then if Han's your leader, that's the resource that you defeat is the one you used to pay for it. So you're not actually having exhausted resources in play when you're actually taking your actions.
And you end up with the Millennium Falcon, which you got to attack with on the turn you played it.
Yeah. So Ruit solid 3 cost, 3/4. Yeah, good card all around. Nothing bad to say.
So I think one way to look at this card's ability is to say either pay 1 or heal all damage from this unit.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to happen some percentage of the time. You're going to put this back in your hand and you're going to feel great about it because you're going to play it again and you're going to remove another thing. Now, admittedly, that's an investment of 6 resources to remove 2 hypothetical threats with your one card. I think I'm okay with paying 6 resources to force a 1-for-2 trade on your part. Like, that feels pretty good to me. And it's still around, and potentially I can do it again, or I can pay the 1 to keep it out if I need it there. The flexibility of making that an either or and making it so low costed, like 3 is a cheap cost for this body, especially as a space unit. I could go on and on about this card. I think this is very, very strong. Even if you're not using the Han Solo free ramp card like you were describing to keep it in play, even if you're bouncing it each turn, I think it still probably sees play.
Yeah, probably. And just thinking about like you could, yeah, if it does play it, attack, bounce it, play it, attack, bounce it. I think because you're protected from like the Imperial Interceptor, that deals 3 damage, right? So you're kind of protected from a lot of those low cost cards, in those other factions. So yeah, I honestly haven't even thought about the bounce play. You must have played lots of Kitty Pryde and Marvel Snap, bounce decks, but yeah, the bouncing, it's an easy way to heal it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. All right, so now that we've established we definitely want the Millennium Falcon in our deck, let's upgrade this with a 1-cost Cunning affiliated upgrade smuggling compartment attached to a vehicle unit. Attached unit gains on attack, ready resource, and it gives the attached unit +1/+1. Feels pretty good to me, I guess, but I'm a little skeptical how much I actually want to put this in my deck. Like maybe in sealed or draft, if I know I'm like going heavy into space, or I guess a constructed deck that's on this color that you know you're gonna rely on your space units a little bit more. I don't know that the on attack ability feels that strong, and +1/+1 doesn't feel that strong. I mean, we just looked at a card that gave +2/+2, and I wasn't thrilled with that one either. So this is not my favorite upgrade. What are your thoughts?
I don't think this card is that great. I think, if I want to play an upgrade, right, you want to know that you're going to get value out of it. I don't know that you're going to always get the value out of the smuggling compartment. It's if you never get to ready resource, this is just an experience token, that you paid 1 for. So,
And a card
in your deck. So I don't know. I'm struggling with this one. I think maybe this could be like a combo piece in a very specific deck that we haven't seen all the pieces for yet. But if you've
Fair.
played with the Boba Fett leader at all, that allows you to like ready resources, sometimes you have nothing to spend those resources on. So I think maybe this is a piece for a combo unit we haven't, for a combo line we have not seen all the pieces for. Maybe like if this said on attack, like, search for a card or something. I don't know. Like, I don't know. That's
I'm just
probably
looking
too
at
strong.
that rarity, and I'm thinking how bummed I'm going to be when this takes up uncommon slots in my packs.
That'll be hyperspace though, so you can trade it.
Let's move on.
I mean, what's that other? There was one other vehicle upgrade we saw, which was a 2-cost in command. That was a +2/+2, and it gave it on attack. If this is not attacking a base, you can deal 2 damage to a unit in that arena. Because that can go on, right? So that attaches to vehicle units, right? So, like that could go on a snow speeder. That could go on a AT-AT, an ATST. I don't know if that makes it any better. Yeah. I think, yeah. All right, we'll move on. I was trying. I'm sorry.
I mean, I guess the art's kind of okay.
Sure, it's a couple boxes. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it would have been funnier if they would have actually put like Han in there, given his line about smuggling himself. Anyway,
yeah.
All right, let's move on to a card that we might actually play. 3-cost aggression, heroism affiliated Fighters for Freedom. This is a 3/4 unit with Saboteur, and when you play another aggression card, you may deal 1 damage to a base.
Yeah, this is the cheese here right here. I think for that red white combo, aggression, heroism, right? That Sabine deck where she's dealing damage to bases and she flips and she's dealing damage to your base when she attacks, and then the Sabine unit that deals damage when she attacks. Like this card, you need to deal with this right away. If I'm playing against Mr. Ben and he drops Fighters for Freedom, I need to deal with this right away because he's going to ping me to death. Right? It's going to be death by 1,000 cuts. Because if you're playing this, your deck's full of nothing but cards with red symbols on them. So you're always getting value of whatever card you play. I think this is a very solid card. I think it's going to be in every constructed aggression heroism deck. This is just a baseline solid 3-cost. The stats are good. The abilities are even better.
Saboteur is a really important word. Not only does it let you ignore Sentinel, it lets you rip shields off. It doesn't just ignore the shields, it rips the shields off a target. So a 3-cost 3/4 that lets you Saboteur is a playable card on itself. And this also has like an end game combo burst for face built in. Like, how is this card only an uncommon? Like, this is really the only thing I have negative to say about this is it says Fighters for Freedom, and the card art is people not fighting.
Yeah, they're like they're getting coffee or something. You know, they're getting they look like warm
diplomatic conversations for freedom.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is a smash hit aggro card. This is a combo card. This is a tech card. It's wild that one card is able to do so much and still have good stats for a fair cost.
Yeah. One of my favorite cards that I've seen ever in any card game.
Yeah.
Of all time.
Hey, you know what your great aggression tool needs? The ability to combo for face damage.
Yeah.
What? Okay. And cards like this are why aggression decks don't need a 7-cost Mace Window.
Yeah, but if you had a set, you get this card makes Mace Windu even better because when you play him, he deals a damage and attacks and readies and attacks again, right? So,
except now you can't play all your other aggression cards from hand because you had to put them into your resource row to pay for Mace Windu. Anyway.
Well, you can't win them all.
We need some card draw. That's what we need. That's the next aggression.
Yeah, you need some card draw.
All right, so this one's a home run. Let's move on to Tarkin Town. So this is a 25 health base. It has an epic action. Deal 3 damage to a damaged non-leader unit. So I get to pay 5 health off of my win condition to deal 3 damage once to one of your lesser important units. What am I missing here, man? Do you like this card? There's no way you like this card, right?
I don't like it.
That was a long pause.
It's hard to figure this one out. The threat of 3 damage on a unit whenever you want it is strong, but it's limited to a damage unit and it can't be a leader unit. So you've already put 2 levers that I have to pull to get the 3 damage. Then you added a third lever of it costing 5 health. If you have a unit, right, like a Fighter for Freedom out, if we're playing the mirror, let's say.
As one should.
And I pinged it with Fallen Lightsaber, right? I could use this to defeat your Fighters for Freedom if I feel like you're going to dump your hand on me somehow. I think the threat of 3 damage for 5 health is solid. I think the restrictions of a damaged non-leader unit really pull back on that threat. I don't know. I think I play the generic aggression base, but I don't know also as an aggression deck how much I care about my health also. So I don't know. I think I got to play with it. But face value, I don't think it's that great, but I've been proven wrong before.
I will agree with you that health is a resource, and particularly if you're playing aggro slanted decks, you have to be willing to use your health as a resource. And sometimes that means choosing to go face instead of trading, knowing that that unit you didn't kill is going to hit you in the face. That's one way you can buy winning the game,
Yeah.
using your health as currency. But you don't want to be capricious with your health. And there is just so many restrictions on this. If it was pay 5 health to be able to do 3 damage anywhere I wanted, I think I would play that card. I think I'd feel really good about playing the card. If this could go to the enemy base, I play this 10 times out of 10 in an aggro deck. But it
I think
can't
that's
hit
probably
the
too
base.
good.
Yeah. So then we limit it to units. Oh, but it also can't hit leader units, which most of the leaders we've seen have big enough butts that 3 damage isn't going to be a threat to leaders anyway without having to hit it with something else first.
Yeah.
So this is always going to be an epic action plus something else, or you get 0 value out of it because you have to damage whatever the target is first. And it has to be something that's not the most important. I don't know. I don't see it.
I think if this just said 3 deal damage, like if they wanted the lever, right, deal 3 damage to a damaged unit, okay? Just a damaged unit. I think I'd feel better about it. But the really narrowing me down to a non-leader unit, man, I want the ability to punch Luke in the face. If this costs me an epic action, I can only do it once a game.
It can't ping shields. The only reason I can think they put the restriction of non-leader on there is because there's going to be a 3 health leader and they didn't want people to be able to one-shot it. But that seems...
I don't think we get a 3 health leader, man. I think 4 is as low as
I don't
go.
either.
Unless
Which makes
like
me wonder why this says non-leader.
Right? Like Salacious Crumb could be like a 3 health leader, right?
Yeah. Deploy on turn 1.
Yeah. And defeated by C-3PO. When C-3PO enters play, defeat this leader.
Yeah. I don't like this base. I don't like it.
Can't win them all.
And that brings us to the end because somehow I started my slideshow on the last slide for some reason.
That's all right. Wait, there's one you missed.
Is there?
Yeah, the double aggression card.
I don't. It wasn't on SWODB when I was making this earlier.
All right, I'll share it. Okay, there it is. So, 4 cost aggression,
I like that art.
Double aggression. This is the name, right? So we've had command, we've seen vigilance. Here we have the legendary double aggression aspect, 4 cost aggression event. Choose 2 in any order. Draw a card, defeat up to 2 upgrades, ready a unit with 3 or less power, or deal 4 damage to a unit. What are your thoughts, Mr. Ben?
So all of these really give you a lot of insight into what this faction wants to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that surprises me on here is draw a card. Most of these do the things that we expect the faction to be doing, and it does them really well. But this one, the aggression one, has what I think might be considered offsetting one of the weaknesses of the aggression faction, which is gassing out because you vomited all your dudes out to the board. This lets you offset that by picking up an extra card while also maybe getting an extra attack or clearing something off. The only mode on this that I'm really unimpressed with is the defeat 2 upgrades. I guess in matchups where you're like worried about shields and experience tokens, I feel like that's going to get hit a lot more often than actual like fallen lightsabers and those types of upgrades. I feel like that's going to be the lower value of the 4 modes, but they all are going to be useful in different circumstances, and I think fit what you expect aggression cards to be doing. Getting ready, turning right, damaging stuff. Makes sense.
This art works pretty baller too.
Yeah, it's great.
Do you think this card is worth paying the aspect penalty for and paying 6 for in a deck where you're not running mono, right? So say you're Sabine, right? So she is aggression, heroism, and do you play an aggression base to play this? Or do you play cunning so you can get some combat tricks? In that scenario where you're playing like a cunning Sabine deck, is this card worth paying 6 for to get these
Probably
effects.
not. I mean, we've got like open fire already. I mean, I guess the flexibility does count for a lot, but man, 6 is a big number, and especially if you're on an aggressive deck, you're on an aggressive plan, that's a big number.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if any of these double aspect ones make the cut in a non double aspect deck. What do you think? If you're not on aggression, would you put this in your deck?
That's why I asked you, because I didn't know the right answer. Um, for six, I can choose 2 and anywhere. I can draw a card, or I can defeat 2 upgrades, or ready a unit, or do. So open fire is 3 by itself. Readying a unit, you got to deal 2 damage to it for defeating 2 upgrades. I'm gonna say no for right now. I don't. I reserve the right to change my mind later, but I don't think I throw this in. I don't think, unless I'm playing strictly aggression. I don't think I pay the aspect penalty for this.
Yeah, 6 is a big number, man.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, there it is, aggression, and yeah, dig the artwork. It's better than Han's 3-colored skin. Yeah.
All right, so that brings us to the end of the card reveals. I guess the last thing we wanted to discuss today before we get to any listener questions was kind of talking generally about deck building and theory crafting about what we want to do with regard to putting our decks together. At this point, we've got a little less than, but around half of the card pool revealed. We've seen the way FFG built the demo decks, as well as the starters. So we have some ideas what they think people should be doing as far as building decks. So I think we're going to take a little while here and sort of spitball what our approaches are to deck building, and specifically within the framework of Star Wars Unlimited. So I'm going to throw it to you, Banana. When you sit down to build your Grand Inquisitor deck, what's your approach?
For Grand Inquisitor, the first thing I do is put him in a binder.
Yeah.
And then I
pull out a different leader.
And then I pull out Sabine, or IG-88, or Darth Vader. So I'm interested to see where people's curves come. Like, how many do you run 1-cost units? If you do, how many? How many 2-cost units do you run? How many 3-cost units do you run? How many events are too many? Like, we have 50-card deck with this action economy. How many events are too many? How much removal do you run? Do you run 10 removal cards? Do you run 12 removal cards? Is that direct damage? How many combat tricks do you run? There's a lot of variables here, so it's all very interesting to see how this plays out. But for me, the first thing I'm going to sit down with the leader I want to play and the aspects I want to play it, and then I'm going to go through and I'm probably going to find the ground units I think are good, and I'm going to put them in a big stack. And I'm going to grab the space units I think are good, and I'm going to put them in another stack. I'm going to grab the events I might want to play, and they go to another stack. And then I'll go through all those again, and I'll be like, all right, I need some 1-cost, I need some 2-cost, and I'll try to get how does this work with my leader. I'm probably going to look for something to protect my units, right? So I'll probably something with some, what's that word called? Sentinel. I'm going to want some sentinels so they can't hit my base. Right. So I think that's probably my approach is I'll pick a leader, then I'll grab the cards. I'll go through, throw them in big stacks, and then whittle it down from there into a whatever size deck, play some games with it, whittle it down some more, swap some cards out for some other cards that I want to test out and see how it works within the deck, and whittle it down from there. What about you? I'd say that's my general approach to just deck building in general, and no matter what card game it is, right? I've done the same thing in Versus. I've done the same thing in Final Fantasy. The only game I really haven't done that for is Keyforge, because your deck is generated by a computer algorithm, so you can't really do that.
That would be cheating.
Yeah. So, but every other card game that's not computer generated, yeah, that's how I do it. What about you?
So I suppose I should preface this by saying, like, in some ways, every deck is its own thing. Like, building a deck is there is some science to it, but there's also some art to it. So specific, like if we're talking about this specific leader and this specific combo, my approach might change. So this is all going to be very general guidelines as far as the stuff that I keep in my head for each card game, how I approach it, as opposed to like the nitty gritty of how many 1-drops. I don't know how many 1-drops yet. I will eventually crunch the numbers on that once we know more about the game, but I have kind of an idea, but I haven't drilled down quite to that point. I like comparing deck building to art, and there's some other terminology that I kind of like using. With the advent of 3D printing, there started being the term of additive manufacturing, where you're taking little bits of something like a 3D printer does and building it together to create an eventual structure. And this stands in opposition to more traditional material construction like sculpting, where it's a subtractive manufacture. You have your boulder and you chisel it away to reveal the piece of art within it. Much like you talked about, I build decks that way too. I like subtractive manufacturing with regard to my decks. So I will sit down and say, okay, what are the best 1-drops, 2-drops, 3-drop? And I will lay out way more. If I'm building a 60 card deck, I might lay out 100 cards on my playmat. And then I start to whittle them away. And I like to approach decks by asking myself questions of like, what is my perfect turn 1? What is my perfect turn 3? On turn 5, what do I want to be doing? And approaching, rather than trying to build the whole deck at once, I try to build a series of ideal or optimal turns. And then how do I knit those turns together? And that becomes my deck. For Star Wars Unlimited, I strongly predict that having units in play is going to be critically important. I think this is going to be a lot like the first expansion of Hearthstone. It's going to be a lot like the first expansion of a lot of card games, where it's going to be dictated heavily by the choices you make as far as how you handle combat interactions and how well you can control the board. So I predict that the sort of general Star Wars Unlimited deck is going to be 2/3 or more units with 1/3 or less upgrades, events, non-unit cards. And out of those units, I suspect further that about 2/3 of those are going to be your ground units in most decks. So you're going to have more of a commitment to the ground than to space, and a much larger commitment to units than non-units. And that would be the sort of guideline architecture that I would approach deck building with in this game.
That all seems fair and reasonable to me. I will say our answers are probably both wrong, and the correct answer is just net deck, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Right. The correct answer is just net deck. Just copy what everyone else is doing. Yeah.
Now, if you do want to apply the science to deck building, the way you do that is with the hypergeometric calculator. You figure out, okay, turn 2 is my key drop. How many 2-drops do I need to have in my deck in order to have an 80% chance of hitting a 2-drop in every game? Okay, I need this many 2-drops. And then you sort of figure out, again, you're kind of like the way I talked about, like building a series of perfect turns rather than building a perfect deck. Even with the calculator, you're going to be looking at your key plays. Like, okay, turn 2, turn 4, and 5 are my most important turns. How can I optimize those turns? And then every other turn is going to have less optimization. Like if turn 4 is really important for you to hit your drops, well, you might have to run fewer 1-drops or fewer 3-drops to make sure you have enough 4-drops to make sure you don't whiff on that turn. And that kind of approach to deck building is absolutely something where a tool like the hyper calculator can be really useful in dialing in, okay, I want an 80% chance to hit a 1-drop in turn 1 in a 60 card deck. Well, then I need 11 1-drops.
Yeah. I think also, if you're approaching deck building for the first time, you need to have some sort of game plan for what you want the deck to do and how you want to win the game. And well, you have to have a kind of an idea of what that looks like in your head before you start looking at cards. Because it's not just as simple as, I'm going to throw these 50 cards together because they all are really strong. Because if they don't work well together, you could fall flat on your face. You got to have some sort of plan for how the game's going to play out. And then the fun part is figuring out how that interacts with the other decks and the other matchups that you test against and gauntlet run for in these events, right? That's what's fun, I think, is I build this. This is my plan. Let's see how it stacks up against all my friends' decks that are, doing the same thing, but with different decks and different plans.
Some advice that I think is correct, but I have a really hard time following, is always build your deck first. So what does your deck do? You want to flood the board? Okay, let's build the flood the board part of the deck first and make sure that works. Devote every single slot in your deck to flooding the board. Oh, you want to build towards late game bombs and outvalue your opponent with 7 and 8 drops? Okay, devote every single card in your deck to your strategy. Then put in some reps with that deck. Once you start to get familiar with what works and what doesn't work, and you start to see the things that other people in your play group or your locals are doing that are giving you challenges, then you say, okay, I'm getting run over in the early game. I'm going to have to sacrifice some of these late game bombs to make room in my deck to have enough speed bumps early that I can survive to the part of the game where my deck gets to do the thing that I want. The trap I fall into all the time is I have about a half an idea. I half build my deck, and then I start cramming in the answers and the hate cards for all the decks that I think other people are going to play. And I end up building a deck that isn't my deck at all. It's me trying to counter stuff that might not even show up to the event. And the sage-like wisdom I get from my friends often is like, dude, take out all these tech cards, put your deck together first, because you don't have 25 cards to hate on the other people's decks. You just don't. And there's going to be 25 cards in the set that are going to do things that you're going to go, oh man, that would be really good. And in this specific situation, I would love to have this card. No. You need cards that are good in all the situations, not just narrow situations. And it's more important that your deck works well than that you have a counter card that makes the other guy's deck work poorly. And I struggle with that lesson really hard a lot of the time because I love being the guy who is like, oh, you're going to cast that? Well, I have a counter spell. I love being that guy. I know I'm terrible, but I love being that guy. So I often try to be more reactive with my deck than it is actually reasonable. You've got to be proactive. You have to try to win first and then try to hose the other player second. In almost not every deck, there's an exception to every rule, but most of the time, that's the way I think it is the better way to approach deck building, even though, again, I personally struggle with it.
Right. Like, so versus system for you, right? If 60 card deck, you might only need 48 cards to pull your stuff off. You have 12 spots to play with, and then that's where you figure out your counter plays, right? But you just go straight 30. 30 cards.
Well, this is also a sort of byproduct of my deck building process in that, like I said, I like to put out everything that might be good and then start to whittle away. And sometimes my eyes are bigger than my deck tin. And there's just too many cards on my playmat, and I end up whittling away the important stuff. And, I throw out the baby and keep the bathwater sometimes. That's a terrible analogy.
Yeah, but that's so. Another way is like to approach deck building is instead of looking at an overall game plan, but it could just be, hey, this is my favorite character. This is a really cool card. How do I make this work? And then build the stuff around that to support that from there. But you generally get to the same idea. You're just starting at a different point, right? Instead of starting at the overall game plan, you're starting with how do I make this work?
I think
and then you'll get there later.
It might be worth taking it one step even further back and asking yourself the question, what do I want to accomplish with this deck? Am I building a deck to play with my kid at the kitchen table? Well, that's going to influence the card choices you put in that deck. Am I building this to go play at my locals where I'm going to teach my friend his first game? Am I trying to win some money at a cash tournament? depending upon what you're doing, am I building a theme deck so I can write an article about it for a content website? All of these things kind of matter because, to be clear, while most of this discussion has been us talking about building like competitive decks, and that's absolutely my bias, the people who engage with these games by building thematic decks that kind of tell a story or let you relive a moment from the Star Wars films, that's totally valid.
Yeah.
That's, honestly, not only is it valid, that's probably a more popular way to engage with these cards than getting super serious and using the hypergeonomic calculator like I'm talking about. And that's totally okay too.
What's up?
But your goals are different there. So you might not be trying to optimize, every time I want to hit a 2-drop on turn 2, you might want to go, I need C-3PO and R2-D2 in this deck because they were there at this moment in the movie that I'm trying to recreate. And that's cool too. Some of the most fun I've had with trading card games is picking an objectively bad card and building a whole deck around it just because I like the picture on the card or the character that it represented. There's a lot of fun to be had there. I would not do that if I was paying an entry fee to a cash event, though.
Yeah, that's all fair. But, side events at events, you could always run like a world's worst, right? You got to run. Your deck has to be all bad cards. I expect a very healthy thematic community run formats, right? Like, especially after we get some more sets. All right, we're going to do prequel decks, right? We're going to have prequel night where all your stuff has to be prequels, right? I can see that happening at locals all the time. All right, we're going to have a sequel trilogy night where everything has to be from the sequel trilogy. That's going to happen, right? That Star Wars lends itself to those thematic offshoot side events or theme events. So I think, yeah, it's all valid, right? However you want to engage and have fun, it's all valid. There's no wrong way to do it, unless you're playing Grand Inquisitor with smuggling apartments.
Unless you're playing 8 Vaders,
8
right?
Vaders. Yeah, I'm feeling woozy here. I think we're good, right? You have anything else on deck building?
Yeah, I think that
was a good general. I think obviously we're early, and I think we're trying to be friendly and conscious to their first time card players coming into this game. So that's why we're interjecting some of these more new friendly concepts on how to approach deck building and all this stuff, and how to, like we talked about, how to build a local scene and how to get your community engaged. We talked with Dan before. So I expect lots more of those and eventually deeper deck building discussions once we actually have like a meta and everything.
I guess one last tidbit about deck building that I want to, if we're talking about this from the perspective of people who haven't played with a lot of card games and don't have experience, a 55% win rate with a deck is amazing. Like, it doesn't always feel amazing when you play 10 games and you lose 4. That feels like maybe not the best, but actually in these 1v1 card games, that's a fantastic win rate. So reset your expectations just a little bit, particularly if you're coming to this kind of game from something like a more traditional like war game or something where you build up to a lot more, like one big consequential thing happens during the game. These games are designed to go quick. So you're going to play lots of games and you're going to lose games. Like, there's no such thing. Even a 60% win rate is like unheard of excellence in this kind of space. So just be prepared to lose. And it doesn't mean your deck sucks. It doesn't mean you're bad at the game. You're going to lose a lot, even if you're great and you have an awesome deck. And just go into the experience like they say at the boxing gym. We either win or we learn.
Yep. Fail forward, right? That's the way you look at it, right? You ready to move on? Listener questions?
Sounds great.
All right. First one is from Shadow of the Bat, good friend Roland. If you could bring back a Legends character into new canon, who would it be?
I'm not totally sure I can name that many Legends characters off the top of my head. Roland is revealing me as not being a hardcore enough Star Wars fan. What's that one guy? Is Dash Rendar considered a Legends character? Because that might be the only one I can
Probably.
name.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but we'll accept it.
Okay. Who's the protagonist of the book I, Jedi? I read that. Maybe that guy.
For me, I'm gonna say Prince. I think it's Zizor is how you pronounce it. So there was a novel, right, in like the mid to late '90s, Shadows of the Empire, right? And there was like an N64 video game, and the bad guy, Prince Zizor. So I'll say him.
Well, that was the video game with Dash Rendar in it, right?
Yeah.
That's what he's from. Okay, well,
Yeah.
if Prince Zizor counts, then Dash Rendar counts. We're good.
The Gandork wants to know if the Broncos have any shot versus the Chiefs. I'm going to say no, and I'm pretty sure that game's probably over by now.
I don't know any of those words.
It's football. Check the score here quick. Yeah, the Chiefs won 19-8, so no, the Broncos, in fact, do not have any shot because they already lost 4.
Coming to that question like Biff Tannen with a sports almanac,
Yeah.
man.
Went back in time for that. As we near almost 50% of the set revealed, at what point do you think you need to look back and reevaluate some of your initial takes on cards? Never. We're always right.
No. I was literally going to say the exact opposite. I was going to be like, kind of always.
Yeah. It's an ever evolving thing, right? You're always learning more. And
so here's the thing about cards, especially from a competitive lens. The vast majority of the card pool isn't going to make the cut. It just never is. When we're talking about top tables, we're looking at like the top 10, maybe 15% of the cards. So a huge chunk of the card pool is never going to be even in a tournament deck. And out of the cards that make it in tournament decks, only a sliver of those are going to make it to the top tables. So there's sort of a cheat code in doing card game reveals is that you just say everything sucks, and you're going to be right like so often, like 80% of the time you're going to be right if you just say, but that's so boring and lame, and like if something's bad, I'm going to say it's bad, and I don't think that makes me like a negative person or a hater or anything. Like I'm just always here giving my honest opinion, and I will honestly tell you I'm going to be wrong some of the time. Like I'm gonna misgauge how effective a card is. I'm going to misread the card or misunderstand how it interacts with the rules. Sometimes I'm just straight up going to miss. I'm just going to say a card's going to suck, and then it turns out to be good. Although much more likely, I'm going to say, hey, I like this card. This card's going to be good, and it's going to turn out to suck. Because that's almost always, almost all the cards turn out to not make the cut competitively. So when do I go back and review my card analysis? Literally every time I look at a card. I try as hard as possible to not be calcified in my beliefs and be open to the unavoidable, inevitable fact that I'm going to be wrong some percent of the time. And then all I have to do when I'm encountered with proof that I'm wrong is change my mind. And now I'm right again, and I can move on, continuing to be my perfect track record of rightness.
60% of the time, I'm right every time. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think you always have to be open to the idea that you were wrong, right? So I think it's a constant ongoing thing. Inception from the Garbage Rollers wants to know, when is everyone planning on playing the game outside of demos, when X amount of cards are spoiled, not till the game's released, etc. It sounds like you're already doing that at your VIP nights, running demo games.
I mean, those are the demo decks, though, so
it's still out.
Kind of is the demos.
Yeah. For me,
I'm definitely going to proxy cards before they're all out, for sure.
Yeah.
I haven't, other than the demo decks yet, just because it's if I'm going to print out cards and cut them out with my scissors and put them into sleeves, that's not necessarily something I want to do over and over again. So I'm kind of holding off until there's enough of a card pool that I can somewhat confidently make decks that I'm pretty sure I'm actually going to want to play. But soon, almost inevitably over winter break, when the kids are out of school and me and my son are sitting here looking at each other, playing every game that we have, I feel like that's when we're going to go, hey, let's pick some cards and print some proxy decks for Star Wars Unlimited. So probably before the end of the year. That's my prediction. For me, anyway. How about you? Are you thinking about printing proxies, or are you just going to wait till there's real product available?
Probably definitely gonna wait till there's. So if my local, I already reached out and said, hey, I'm willing to run demo games for this game. If they're like, hey, you want to come do some demos? Yeah, I'm gonna print some decks and get that done. But other than that, and I'll probably wait till actual product to do that. But I've been playing on Felt Table a couple times a week, building decks, and the AI it's AI. It's not perfect, but it gives you a general idea of how the game and the decks function. So it is a useful tool that I think is beneficial to the community. So shout out to the guys maintaining that. And they update the cards pretty regularly when there's reveals, so you can update decks and create new decks and all that. So yeah, that's how I've been interacting with the game mostly is through Felt Table, which isn't perfect, but it gives you a good feel for the game and a good idea of how decks are going to function. What are each of you more excited about, weekly OP boosters or 3 store champs a year? So the 3 store showdowns, because we know we're getting 3 sets a year, March, July, and November, I think it is the 3 sets.
I believe you.
So yeah, so what are you more excited for, weekly OP booster packs or the 3 store champs a year?
I almost don't care about weekly store booster packs, which, like, they are cool, and I don't mean to be a hater. Like, alternate art is cool. OP kit exclusive alternate art is cool. I think that's all very neat. It's going to get people in the store. But I predict that my weekly booster packs are going to quickly get sold in order for me to buy more normal plain artwork cards, because I like cards as widgets. I like playing the game. So I'm way more excited about store championships and the casual OP and the competitive OP that FFG has sketched out for us. I'm way more all about that, even though I think the store booster packs are cool. But if I have to talk about my excitement of those two things, one of those I care about a lot, and the other one I don't care about that much, even though it's cool.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm more excited for like the store showdown scene than the weekly. I think the weeklies are great, but the weekly for me isn't about the 3 card booster pack I'm going to get. It is about the community building and the camaraderie and the stuff you're doing with the other people in your community. For me, it's not about this booster pack I'm going to get for showing up. It's about all the other stuff that's going to happen there with the people in the building.
Yep.
Now that we've heard the general philosophy of 3 of the 4 aspects, which aspect do you most identify with?
Cunning. 100%.
Cunning. Aggression for me.
That'd be my number 2. But if I have to pick one, I'm going with exposed naval Han all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. That was it for listener questions. So yeah. Anything else you want to touch on?
Great.
Or you want to take us out?
No, I think that brings everything we had scheduled on our flight plan to conclusion here today. It was good getting together with you, man. I always enjoy talking about some new cards. And I guess until next time, we'll see you in the arenas.